honored. My name's Steve Petrazik. I'm the Director of Admission here at Portsmouth Abbey, and I'm very excited to have you guys with us today. As I mentioned earlier, this one's for the parents, and as I was thinking about this whole process that we've had this year, it's been a different process, to say the least, right? And for many of you, you did not have the opportunity to come to campus before you applied. In some cases applied sight unseen. Fortunately, many of you have had the opportunity to come to campus while our students were on spring break, which was great to at least see the place. But there's been less face-to-face interaction here. And I think an important part of Portsmouth Abbey is getting to know the community. And our parents are a huge part of this community. And, the decision to send your son or daughter away to boarding school does not mean that you are saying goodbye, and does not mean that you are not an active part of their school community. Far from it here. We love having our parents on campus. We love having our parents on the sidelines and doing different things with us. And we just got word, excitedly, that spectators will be allowed at our sporting events. And so I know that's huge news for our parents who want to come and cheer on their sons and daughters and haven't been able to do so this year. Again, you're an important part of this process. And what I thought we would do tonight is I've got four parents who are here with us today, current parents. In some cases, not only do they have a son or daughter enrolled, but they also have sons who've graduated from Portsmouth Abbey School. No daughters who have graduated yet. We've got a couple that are almost there right now. But what I'd like them to do is share their experiences about the school and the community, reflect a little bit about their sons and daughters. But from you parents in the audience, what I want you to do is don't be shy and use the chat function on the bottom of the Zoom there and ask questions. And after our four parents just talk to you for a few minutes each, what I will do is I will open it up to questions. So I know you all have questions, and don't be shy. Your kids have not been shy. We've had great Q&As at the end of each of these. So again, feel free to type your questions in the chat box. You can type them to everyone. You can type them to me, Steve Petrazik. I'm in the list, and I will go through them and make sure every question gets answered at the end. All right. Without any further ado, I'm going to kick this off to Rhonda Landers, who has a son who graduated and a daughter who's currently enrolled, and she can share some of her insights into Portsmouth Abbey. So Rhonda, take it away.
Thank you, Steve. First, welcome and congratulations to all of you on your child's acceptance. It is no trivial event. And so, as Steve said, I'm Rhonda Landers. I'm a parent of a current third form, and our son is a graduate of last year. Both are day students. Nathaniel was a day student. And in preparing for this, I was reminded of it was a little bit more than a year ago that we had enrolled our daughter as a third form, and our son, a sixth form at the time, was preparing to graduate. And while we could not have predicted all that they would experience at the Abbey, and certainly the challenges created by a global pandemic this past year, our reasons for saying yes to the Abbey were and remain the same for each of them. It's been our complete alignment with the Abbey's mission to help young men and women grow in knowledge and grace. When I think of our reasons for accepting as a family, and I realize many of you had not had the same opportunities to visit the campus. Being local, we were able to visit the campus when both of our children were in 7th grade, but the exceptional faculty just leapt out. The rigorous curriculum, the identity as a Catholic school, and the community created by the monks. It's such a unique and extraordinary experience for our children. And as I look at each one of them, certainly at different developmental phases of their life right now, I know that they were so formed by their experience, and they are so ready for their next steps. Our graduate is attending college. And amazingly, our third form is registering for fourth form. My lecture in the car this morning was to enjoy every moment. I can't believe how quickly this is going by. And it's been an amazing experience. There's everything at the Abbey that has been able to equip them with success. And my remarks have been limited to a few minutes. But literally, if Steve wanted me to speak for 2 hours, I could just continue. So I'm really excited to be part of the panel and answer your questions.
Great. Thank you, Rhonda. Next up, Hillary Fagan is going to speak to you for a few minutes about her experiences with the Abbey, which go back to her father, and then as close as her daughter, Alexis. So Hillary.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, I'm Hillary Fagan. It's great to be with you guys tonight, and absolutely congratulations. This is a exciting time for your children and for your families. I do have a long history, at least my family has a long history with the Abbey. My father was a student here, I don't know, 60 years ago or so, maybe more. I had other family members attend, and now my daughter Alexis is a sophomore at the school. She started in 9th grade. It came from another independent school, a day school in the area, and started as a day student and loved it so much. I think she must have lobbied all year to get to board, and she worked very hard and convinced us all, including the school, that she should be a boarder, and was lucky enough to board this year as a sophomore. She, I think, enrolled and was looking for a larger community. That was one of the reasons why she wanted a change. And she wanted a challenging curriculum, but a larger geographic footprint of friend group. I think she was curious a little bit about the world, and that's one of the gifts the Abbey can give. Students come from all over, and it's pretty refreshing to see the geography and the different points of view. So that was one of the big draws for her. I would describe the community as very tight and supportive. There's a really interesting intersection of a focus on the classics, as well as critical thinking. And these are some buzzwords, but they truly fit the school. And I think that's been pretty eye-opening for her to look at the curriculum and really challenge herself to think critically. And that just makes her, I think, challenged, but also grateful. One of the other things I wanted to point out was her peer group. That's always an interesting, when you think about a school and fit for your child, who else is at the school and what are the kids like? And someone asked me to describe her peer group, and I've recently spent a lot of time with them. And I would say super engaged. That's like the one thing that comes to mind. These kids are curious and bright and hardworking, and they've been a really great influence to learn with. So that was one other thing I wanted to share. And I think the last thing I'd say is, I mean, she's being challenged every day. She's enjoying it. It's hard, but it's truly rewarding. And I think the one thing that's interesting about the Abbey is there's this intersection of values and learning and community. And so it's very unique, and I don't quite know how to describe it, but I think it's definitely worth exploring for your child. So happy to answer questions, but that's Alexis's story.
Great, thank you. Speaking of questions, someone's got to take the leap and write the first question in the chat box. So I throw that challenge out. Oh, we got one. Yes. All right. Good. So that's one, and hopefully you have many more. I'm going to introduce our third speaker, David Cenabria. David is here talking about his son, Diego, who is in the graduating class this year. He will graduate in a few short months, which is incredible to think of, that it's gone by that quickly. So if I'm thinking that, I can imagine how David's thinking that, how David thinks about that. But David, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So my name is David Cenabria, and I'm speaking to you from San Juan, Puerto Rico. I think hearing the other parents and having met other parents in the community, our path to the Abbey has been very different than everyone else's. My family is very close knit. We're in Puerto Rico. No one in my family ever went to boarding school. My son and my daughter, they're actually twins. They were well set and established as both students, athletes, and leaders in the school community here in Puerto Rico. And we never thought of them going to boarding school. Then in 2017, Hurricane Maria destroyed our area. And one of my son's passions was football, American football. And that was one of the things that was hit the hardest because all the facilities were destroyed. And as you would imagine, American football is not very common here in the Caribbean. So he wanted to have the opportunity to at least pursue football at a high level and perhaps aspire to play in college. And in response to that, I was fortunate enough that I was able to take him to a few summer camps in the New England area, perhaps, so he could someday make connections. But the intent was for him to always be here in Puerto Rico. But then when that happened, we ended up exploring some ideas, and one of them was to send him to boarding school in the States, which again was not part of the plan. And we contacted some people that we met through the camps, and one of those people was a former parent of Portsmouth Abbey. And he spoke so much, so highly of the Abbey that it was, we ended up putting it on the list of a few schools that he ended up applying to. Again, completely foreign concept to us, being from a place where, kids walk to school, we live on the beach, it's 100 feet that way. And, that's their backyard. So they ended up, he ended up doing a whirlwind visit of 4 schools. He went to we went to 3 football games in 4 days. He went to the schools, took the exams, did the interviews, all in that 4-day span. And the last place we visited was the Abbey. And when he got in the car, he said, "That's where I want to go." And I said, "Really?" And I said, what was it? What made the difference? And he said, "The people." And when and again, I'm sharing this part of my experience because I know that for many of you, you have not had the chance to visit. But when we visited, again, it was the last school in 4 days. It was just everything happening very fast. Mr. Skelly, who's here in the forum, he introduced us to one of the student ambassadors who met my son and just whisked him away and just showed him around the school while we met with the admissions folks. And when my son came back from that, and we got in the car, he said, "This is where I want to go." And so far, his experience has been phenomenal. He has grown immensely. He went there again. He was in an independent private school that's arguably one of the best schools in the Caribbean. And he made a transition there that has been smooth. It didn't come without challenges because obviously, being so far away from home and not being a place that you can necessarily, or you can't possibly drive to in any event. So we had to deal with homesickness, meeting new people. He had absolutely no connection with the school. But I can say that today, he's a very different person because of his experience that he's had there. And one of the most surprising things that I can say that he had was, even though our family were Catholics, and we may not, and I'm not saying this, this is a judge-free zone, but we don't necessarily go to church every Sunday. But when he went to the Abbey, he found and discovered a lot about his faith there, and he made some choices that really impressed me. The way that he was independently decided to follow certain things, and now when he comes back, we can see the difference in his maturity, in his independence, in his commitment to his faith. That it's just simply remarkable. And by going there, he has made the most of some of those opportunities, and he's done well in athletics, and now he's headed to a great college next year, and he's poised for great success in the years ahead, which is greatly attributed to his experience at the Abbey. And like the other parents here in the forum, I'm more than happy to answer any other questions that you may have. So,
Excellent. Thank you so much. And speaking of questions, we've got some great ones. And I'll just warn my parent panels here, there are no layups that have been asked so far. Nothing about how's the food or what's the dress code. We've got some real great questions that are being asked about mission, about growing, about how students have changed. So there's going to be some great questions Please keep asking them in the chat. And I will introduce our last presenter right now, Marybet Lohuis, who had two sons graduate already, and her daughter Martha is currently a sixth former. She's a senior here, and she will be graduating in a few short months. So Marybet, take it away.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for your contributions to this wonderful conversation. So our journey began with our eldest boys in 2006. So we've had a 15-year journey, history with Portsmouth Abbey, and it's kind of shocking that it's been that long. For Ryan and Patrick, it is singularly the most important decision they made and we helped them make. Their Portsmouth Abbey experience continues to shape the decisions they make as young men. They're 29 years old now, which is also shocking, but the wisdom and grace that their time at the Abbey afforded them forever shaped them into the wonderful young men they are today. And that was athletics, it was education, it was being amongst peers, it was perspective from kids from all over that they would not have had they stayed at home or gone elsewhere. And so we live in the Northeast, and there are lots of choices. We were blessed to have lots of choices, and Portsmouth Abbey was singularly the right place for them. Our youngest, Martha, was a different journey, although in my heart, our hearts, we wanted Martha to join the Abbey as a freshman, as a third former. We were not ready for her to be as far away as the boys at that time. So she ended up at a wonderful school in Connecticut. Again, she had excellent choices, but it never felt like home. And I think that is the most important or salient point that I can make, that I can offer this conversation, or you who are considering this in the conversation. The Abbey is home. It was instant for the boys and instant for Martha the moment she decided to make that change. And her life as a student, as a young lady coming of age, has been so immensely improved as a result of her taking that leap of faith to leave a comfortable situation and transfer as a junior. Her quote was, "It's the best decision I've ever made. Thank you for helping me make the best decision in my life." Those are strong words for a young person. And when we asked her to back that up, right, because that's a big statement, she could go on and on. So I too could go on and on. I think, my wonderful colleagues and friends before me have said so much and said it better, but I'm here to answer any questions, having a pretty broad perspective. Particularly for us, the boys arrived at Portsmouth Abbey and we weren't thinking of Instagram and Facebook, and cell phones were fairly new. I think they just got one, and they were flip phones, and they didn't have access to what kids have access to now. So it was slightly less complicated. Dial forward, and in this very tense and tense, I guess is the word I want to use, time for our children, given all those choices and everything that is thrown their way, I just can't imagine a greater blessing for our children than the opportunity to immerse in this loving community where everyone matters. So those are my thoughts to share with you. And again, I welcome any questions.
Excellent. Thank you. We have some great questions in here already, and I'm going to start with the first one. Rhonda, you got called out in the first one, so I'm going to call you out in the first one here. But I think this is something that a lot of people can probably chime in on. You mentioned the mission of the school, and specifically the importance of growing grace. And so a parent would be interested in understanding the meaning or interpretation of how your children grow in grace?
Oh, that's a great question. And I would welcome my colleagues to also offer their perspectives. The Abbey just restated their mission, but they kept that part and really elaborated on their vision statement. Some of you may have seen it on the website. I wish Father Pascal or Brother Benedict were here to assist me, but I will give you my layman's response to that. I mean, the Abbey defines grace as the regenerative power of Christ that lifts hearts and transforms lives. So a powerful statement there. What I would tell you from my own perspective, it is a Catholic boarding school. There are students and faculty of all faiths, and it is all welcoming. And I think our parent David, gave an excellent example. The Abbey assists students with their exploration of their search for God. They are exposed to the monks and curriculum in terms of theology, and the engaging discussions they have as students from all over the world, from all different faiths. And we see, there's students that become confirmed there and can take certain paths. And so what's really great from my perspective is the Abbey, again, assisting students in this exploration, defining that the meaning of life is looking for meaning through God, and giving students that resources to explore that, as they do with so much of their curriculum. And as Mary Beth and many of us have echoed, it's just a foundation that I see in their life, as they, that helps shape them as young men and women and in all their decision making. So again, I would welcome other parents to leap in as well.
Anybody else want to jump in on that one? We've got a
Yeah.
different. Sorry, go ahead, David.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that, yeah, in our case, like I said, my wife and I were both raised Catholics, and our families are all Catholic, but our children never attended a Catholic school. And when my son went there, I was very impressed with the choices that he made, and how he, for example, one of the extracurricular activities that he joined was Lectio Divina, where they read the Bible and they meet as a group. And I was very surprised from the plethora of alternatives that he had for extracurricular activities, that he would choose something like that. It was a surprise to us, and a pleasant surprise at that. And he's really, particularly his grandparents are elated with his growth in his faith, and how when he comes back, he talks to them about it. And it's really a remarkable part of his own self-discovery that we're very happy about. So it's a different perspective on that.
Great, thank you. We have another question that is fairly similar to that. Hillary, I'm going to start with you on this one. What do you think the values, or how would you describe the values that best describe a Portsmouth Abbey student? Is part one of that, and part two of that is what difference does the Benedictine culture make at the school? So the values that best describe an Abbey student, how do you think the Benedictine culture informs that?
I always get the hard ones, I think, but I want to go for it.
Right.
And I'm going to take a slightly different perspective. The backdrop, the Christian faith, informs the community, I think, in a broader sense. Like I think somebody mentioned there are students here, maybe it was Rhonda, from all different faiths, which is right. The way that the school is set up, I think, just brings out positive values in all the students. So kindness, empathy, equality. It's a huge element no matter what faith you are, because when you, as I said in my comments, when you intersect, an academic curriculum and a learning environment with that backdrop, it's a beautiful combination. So it definitely informs the school culture, but I think it's very inclusive of all different faiths. And I'm sort of shortcutting the response, but that's it in a nutshell. And I think the students, because the community is so unique and I think inclusive, all that informs it. So it's tied together in that way, which is terribly described, but I'm going to pass it off to a colleague to do a better job with that one.
Anybody else want to jump in on that? On how would you describe, or what values would you say best describe an Abbey student?
I'll jump in. Martha used a word. She used faith kinship, and I thought that was really interesting. Kinship, and that to me means that's a lot. That's loyalty. That's respect. That's reverence for oneself and one's peers, one's teachers, one's mentors, coaches. And I do think that orientation, that our faith orientation and this value faith-based education infuses our students with that sense of greater good and a deep and abiding respect for each other.
That's great, thank you. And we've got, this is a good one, and I think perhaps all four of you could take a stab at this one. And some of you are farther along in this journey than others. But in what areas do you think your children have changed or grown since being at the Abbey? So I'll let all four of you take a stab at this one. Again, some of you have more a greater change than others, but I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Sure, I'll try to go first. I think in our experience, again, being from further away and not having had the experience of anyone in the family ever going to boarding school, we went away when we were older and went to college. But I think the one of the biggest changes we saw was in the maturity and the independence that our son achieved right away, because he came to the Abbey when he was a 10th grader. He reclassified as a 10th grader. Again, our experience in Puerto Rico during Hurricane Maria is probably very similar, with perhaps a little bit more complications than some people have had with the pandemic, where education was interrupted. People had to adjust to a different format and a completely different experience. So when he came to the Abbey, he was a repeat 10th grader. And but nonetheless, he had never been away from home for more than a weekend, maybe a couple of days more than that, but he had never been away from home. So then, going to a completely different place and having, not knowing anyone in school, he didn't really have any connection with it. I think that was where he grew up the most and he matured the most. And today I can tell, because we have hosted some of his friends here in Puerto Rico that have visited us, and he has been to visit some of his friends. And there are lifelong connections that I can tell from now. These kids are going to be friends for life. And that's one thing. And also the independence of being able to go places and not relying on us for any guidance or anything. He tells me, I traveled with him recently, and he was like, I don't need you, just follow me. And he knew where to go everywhere all the time. He could read, so those are the types of things that, I could see the most significant change in.
I'll jump in next. I would say biggest change would be she was always independent, and I think then became even more so, just having to advocate for herself and manage through. So the independence theme, I totally agree with, huge and very interesting. But I also think I think her intellectual curiosity really grew going to the Abbey. I mean, she was a smart kid and from a great independent day school, but boy, the curriculum's really interesting, and the kids and their thought process. So I think that intellectual curiosity was a really fun to see kind of blossom when she went to the Abbey.
I agree with both Hillary and David's comments. The Abbey has so many experiences. It would be hard to go over each one of them, but our son Nathaniel had the opportunity to do some of the Abbey trips over the summer, some enriching trips, traveling with students and faculty to Rome, to Oxford to read C.S. Lewis. And I also noticed later when we were doing trips, just he and I, for looking at colleges, how the change from when we had looked at high schools, right? You're doing it together with your student, with your child, and yet he was in the driver's seat and he had that engagement and that intellectual curiosity and was navigating, public transportation much better than his mother was. And I've lived in Europe. And so I felt like he had grown and he was ready for those next steps. And every college we went to, he just said, I'm ready. I could see myself here. And it was because the Abbey had prepared him for that. I agree with the intellectual capacity, just their ability to, I watched him interact with people and to step back and watch him drive that. We talked about how we view Abbey students. I would say collectively viewing him, my daughter, their pairs, there's just such a humbled confidence. And I think that just really says it in a nutshell. There's just such a humility about them and humbleness, graciousness, gentleness, but they are so confident and they are so ready to take on the world and at least the next steps. And I could go on and on, but I agree with many of those comments.
Great. Marybeth, anything to add to that?
Yes, I'll be quick, brief. For the boys, it was maturity. They went from 14-year-old boys to young men. And they learned about consequence, good decision-making, and I always love this, that they learned how to be really good friends. And I think that's something I value, and they value the rest, forever. For Martha, as a young lady, it was really the confidence, the growth in her confidence has been remarkable, and in a quiet and very subtle and humble way. And then it's all very authentic. There are no external. It's not boosted by, certainly this year, a lot of social activity or Instagram or anything like that. It was really a coming to understand herself. And that was inspired by being challenged intellectually, being required to show up and demonstrate her capability, and also the opportunity that's afforded to the kids to volunteer and to stand up and be of service. That has really encouraged her confidence and her growth.
Great. We've got one question here. David, I'm going to kick it to you because you're from the farthest away here. What has been the most challenging aspect of having your children at having your son at Portsmouth Abbey?
Wow, that's a complex question. And I think that it was the hardest for me. And I was just thinking, as I was hearing some of the fellow parents speak about their experiences, that each year before my son leaves for summer, I've written to him a letter with the best wisdom I can hope to impart on him. And I have saved them because, in today's world, obviously these letters are emailed to them, so I have access to them. And very deeply personal, trying to guide them the best way possible. And in those letters, I can see that it was probably one of the hardest things that we as parents did was to let him go, and being far away. It's not the kind of thing where under normal circumstances we could take a drive over and see him on the weekend. We are in the middle of the Caribbean, so anytime we need to see him, and we've been fortunate enough that we were able to go to football games, to track meets, and so on. But it doesn't come without a huge sacrifice. So that was incredibly hard. I also think it was a very important part of the experience that his first year at the Abbey, his roommate was from a very remote part of China. And, they became very close friends. And I don't think they could be more different than they are, but to this day, they're very good friends. And I remember during Thanksgiving, my son was home and he was texting away with someone. And I said, put your phone away. What are you doing? And he was texting with his roommate from 10th grade, and, he has that kind of connection. And these are very almost diametrically opposite kids, but they're still good friends to this day and very supportive of each other. And I think that's what made it work for them, that the connections that they made with the people. And I've heard several people speak about maturity and friendships and kinship. I think those things are all very prevalent across the Abbey experience, that, he made connections with teachers, with coaches, particularly with friends and parents of friends that he is deeply close with. And all those things contribute to making this work, even though they have, it has never felt that we let him go too early, or that in any way we're being replaced, or, our relationship is still very close. We talk every day, either FaceTime or phone calls to this day, texts all the time. So the communication is not the same, obviously, because we're not there physically or in person, but it's still it has been a very positive experience. And if you asked me this question 5 years ago when he was in 8th grade, I would tell you I would never let my son go away until he graduated from high school. But now that he's gone through it, my perspective is completely different. And in his particular case, I think, like someone else said before me, perhaps the best decision we've made.
Great. And the second part of this question, that I will kick it, Hillary, I'm going to kick it to you, because you've got, you can draw from both being a parent of a boarding student and the parent of a day student. But from the student's perspective, what's the most challenging aspect of being at Portsmouth Abbey?
In general, the most challenging aspect of being at the Abbey, it's probably how much they're challenged. It's a really great program. So she's got a lot of work, but it's not, I don't want to make that overly dramatic, because I think there's so much support built in that I don't think she feels lost. But I think I would say that she would say the workload. Yeah.
That's fair.
Yep.
All right, I've got I asked for this. I literally asked for it and I got it. How is the food? So any parents want to comment on what their son or daughter has said about the food?
I'll go again. I'm obviously not shy. My son, in his experience, he's both connoisseur. He was raised in an environment where my family, and particularly my wife's family, they love food and they love excellent cooking family. We have great feasts and they gather often, and everything centers around food. So my children have grown up with what I would consider a sophisticated taste of food. And when he went there, he commented that, not only was the food very good, but also that the school has been responsive when they make suggestions. They have become close. My son, for example, he says he's close and good friends with some of the people that work in the cafeteria, and they accommodate to their taste and what they like. And if they let them know, if they give them feedback that they like something, they tend to provide that more often. And so they enjoy that. And another thing that I think would fall under the food as well as the extracurricular activities of the school is that they have sometimes cookouts that they do within their houses, and the kids themselves are the ones that cook, and they organize themselves from the setup to getting the food, cleaning, and who serves, who cleans up, who does this, who does that. And my son, growing up around a house where there's several people cooking all the time, he stepped up, and I've seen pictures, and in the website or in social media of them, and he enjoys that part of it very much. So I think it's absolutely something that I would consider an asset within the school.
Great. Anybody else want to add to that? We've got another question about sort of you touched on this with cookouts and things like that, but we've got one question on weekends and a specific one, the interaction between day students and boarding students after school and on weekends. So Rhonda, you want to talk to us a little bit about your experience?
Yes. Both as having a graduate and a current day student. I even think it was Nathaniel's sophomore year that they actually, well, let me start with day students are assigned to a house, which I love. And I think, I think the way that the Abbey approaches their day and boarding students, they just knock it out of the park in terms of the students having the same experience. The only thing my two children did not do was sleep there. And Reagan may still devise a way in order to do that. But they're assigned to a house, and so they are involved with that house, whether it's going to sitting, attending events. This year they've been divided up more in their pods, attending church and etc. Or different things that they're doing. They have prefects assigned to those houses. But they do such a good job of interacting them. My children stay and have dinner with their peers. And so they are there for a long day. And again, the only thing they're not doing is sleeping there. And what I was starting with is, I believe it was Nathaniel's sophomore year, there were some students that did not believe he was not a day student. He was not a boarding student because he was there so often. And they didn't. So I share that with you because it's really neat when the students don't even know how to distinguish between themselves. I think that's just really hands down that they do a very good job integrating that.
Great, thank you. Speaking of the weekends, there's a question about boarding students getting off campus. And obviously things are different this year with regard to getting off campus. But Marybeth, you've obviously got experience pre-COVID. You want to talk about either Martha or Ryan and Patrick, how they would get off campus
Sure.
on weekends, or what they would do off campus?
Oh, sure. So there's a very consistent and user-friendly protocol in place. It's a request for permission. There are certain weekends that are where you're required to stay, but there are certain free weekends that the kids are, with the appropriate permissions in place, able to leave campus. For Martha, she played ice hockey, for example, and if there was an away game near Boston and she wanted to spend the night or go see a friend, or with us, then we would put the permissions in place. And so that was very easy. Again, it's all about organizing and planning and understanding your schedule and when I can't remember what the term is used because it's been a year of not having that. This year is very different. Same thing for the boys though. Being organized and planning, with enough notice that you can put your request in to take leave for the weekend. It's something they did as frequently as made sense. And it was generally just enough. And not actually, none of the kids really requested it too often. But there's an easy process in place.
Great. I've got one question. I'll handle this one because it's a statistics question, but if anybody wants to jump in, what in terms of number of Latino students and things like that. So I did a quick look-see. Looks like this year we've got about 15 students from Latin America who are actually from Latin America, as opposed to Latin American students. And from El Salvador, Guatemala, Mexico, Puerto Rico. We've also got a couple kids from the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, Cayman Islands. Next year, I know we'll be adding Colombia, Peru, the Dominican Republic to that list. So it's a great, in terms of our geographic diversity, it's phenomenal in terms of where students are coming from. Also, another question about summer camps or summer programs. Unfortunately, we won't be offering our summer program this summer, so I can't share any information for you about that. But getting back to the parents' questions here, there was a question about leadership skills. How do students build up leadership skills? So I know we've got the parents have a couple of prefects in there, but I know also we build leadership skills up from freshmen on. So would anyone like to talk specifically about leadership?
I would just jump in quickly and say that is sort of the beauty of a small class size. And I say that because when you're in the classroom in a very large setting, sometimes you don't get a chance to engage. And when you're in a small classroom, you are on deck all the time to be, articulating your voice and forming an opinion and standing up for what you believe in. So that's sort of the beauty of the school is that you practice that every day in every class. And I think that forms a huge ability to be a leader in your life after. So that's a sort of simple answer, but I think it's what I see. And certainly I've valued that from the school.
I'll add one thing, and Martha, this is a quote from Martha. She said, "There's equal opportunity to engage if you're willing," meaning engage in leadership. And it's been such a blessing. Ryan was a prefect, Martha's a prefect. There are also other clubs and missions and initiatives that allow or afford kids the ability to break into leadership and to encourage that growth, because it's hard. Especially as a freshman, I think you're trying to make sense of all of it, and it could seem daunting. And Martha has a distinct reference based on where she was previously. She kept using equal opportunity. There's equal opportunity as long as you're willing. You can get it done at Portsmouth Abbey. So I hope that's helpful.
Great. All right, we've got a couple of good ones left
I agree.
here.
I think everything has been.
I'm sorry, Dave, you're going to jump in? You froze on me there for a sec.
Oh, no, I just going to say that everyone before me said it very well. The opportunities to develop formally as leaders as well as informally are there. They abound. From my son's currently a prefect, but he also and I remember that when he first got there, he didn't even know what that was, and then eventually he learned about it. And there was the kind of induction process where he learned what it meant, and tried to live up to the standards to be considered, and it was like an objective or a goal to get to that point. And then in athletics, I think it's also important, being captain, in two sports. I think also something that they take very seriously, and that particularly quiet person, or the quiet side, not that he's quiet among other kids, but I know adults, he tends to be seen as quiet. And the opportunity to lead by example and other there's more than one way to lead. It's one of the things I think has learned there.
Okay, great. A couple more questions here. This is a good one, and they're sort of leading into that, but leading into sort of the more academic side of things. But the first one, in terms of academic counseling, and for us that would primarily be the advisor system, but then also college counseling. So Rhonda, you've got both ends here. You've got a daughter here, and she has an advisor, and you've got a son that just graduated and went to the college process. So any words on that?
Phenomenal, both. I'm glad it gives us the opportunity to speak about the advisor. So every student is assigned an advisor, and they are part of a group with peers. And so it's another shuffling of our students perhaps students that they don't have classes with, and et cetera, another opportunity to meet. And they move through their Abbey experience together for all 4 years. And so this is just a advisor that's on the faculty or staff that meets, does check-ins, offers helpful advice, is almost like that other adult voice, reminding them to get enough sleep before exams, and, watching and helping them. They also do one-on-ones with the students. We can touch more on that. The college guidance is phenomenal. If you ever just saw the department present, it is so extraordinary in terms of how they help guide and put the student, your child, in the driver's seat, and leading to good decision making. Going through this process of how schools were selected and what the process was. It's something that we can all be concerned about, and particularly, are they meeting timelines and et cetera. It is such an organized, disciplined process. And to say that about something where students and people are all different and approach things so differently, I think any of the other families would say the same in terms of just how much support the Abbey offers our students at every stage for their next step, but really provides them an opportunity to step up and drive the process. And that leads to better decision making and a better overall process, and prepares them. It's just been delightful. But I could dive into numerous examples in terms of where, we had a very significant medical event our sophomore year, in the way that the Abbey pulled together. And, I led that through the advisor. That is not something I anticipated. It is not something that we would have, but they're able to handle anything that happens. And we can't predict what that landscape will look like.
Great.
I'll weigh in for a moment. As Martha, the youngest of 6, it is far and away the best college process experience, largely due to the fact that we had very little to do with it. It was reporting and some weighing in, and I just, was wondering and hoping it was all going okay. And the outcomes for her were spectacular, especially because she was owning and driving the decision with the tremendous support of the phenomenal college counseling office. And, with 6 kids who, you all came from very, very good schools. Our other daughter stayed home. It couldn't compare. So, and that, again, they all went to fine school, excellent schools. But there was something quite unique about the Portsmouth Abbey process that allows enough support, just enough support, but it really is their decision. And that, I think, is such a powerful and empowering opportunity for them as individuals.
Great. We've got a couple of more good questions here. Some of them kind of group together. But the first one is, about, and Hillary, I'm going to kick this to you because you mentioned, Alexis works really hard, right? And the level of work was something you thought was an adjustment, or not an adjustment, but it was the most challenging aspect of the school. So tell us about conference, what she has told you about conference period, and what if she's struggling with a concept? How does she work through that?
Yeah, and that was actually pretty remarkable to watch her first year. So transitioning into 9th grade, she found math challenging, and like on her own, like I had nothing to do with the council on this. It must have been through the school or her peers or her teachers, but she was religious about going to conference period and meeting with her teachers. And I think she ended up doing exceedingly well in her classes, but it was not, she had to make this journey. And the journey was, she came from a great school. She had a great background. Transitioning in, she must have missed some, I don't know, the building blocks. And I think the teacher was so great and worked with her. And she ended up, doing very well and I think surprising herself. So I think it's important that that the kids do take ownership of the learning and they do seek out help. but I do think there's enough support there because it is small and the teachers are on their toes, that no one's really going to fall through the cracks. There's enough ways to kind of cycle through and get the help that you need. So yeah, that was sort of her story. I think this year's been, I haven't heard anything about anything in math. So the challenge in math is over. Sophomore year, they do this very interesting English history curriculum. Steve, you're going to have to keep me honest on the language, but it is really challenging and interesting. And the novels, the books she's reading are quite challenging. I think at the beginning of the year, she said, "Mom, I'm reading Dante's Inferno. I really love it." And that's sort of like, you know, my coffee cup spilled. So I think that the English curriculum and history curriculum is quite interesting the sophomore year. And I think that's where she's spent a lot of her time and work. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's what you do. If you're struggling in a class, your teachers are there, conference period, in the evenings, during study hours. And so you always have access to them. Plus, you've got a dorm full of peers that can also help you out with things. I've got two questions about preparation. The first one is, how do you prepare your child for going to boarding school for the first time? And the second was, how do you prepare them in terms of study skills or help them prepare academically before arriving? So anyone want to take on that one about how do you prep your kids for boarding and how do you prep your kids for study skills?
With respect to study skills, I even think it was on the website at one time. It may still be on there in terms of how the Abbey, I believe, discourages taking preparatory classes or anything like that. But they basically say read and read, I think is what they have said on the website. The Abbey does, during the summer, they will have the students read for each form a book. And there was it's typically a larger selection. Last year, I think the selection was, within the Form 3 was 5 books, and then the entire school community will read a book together. And those are discussed as one of the first things going into, their literature classes and et cetera. And so I think that's a wonderful opportunity for the school to come together. The parents have also read some of the books and had our own kind of community forums trying to have somewhat of the experience of the Abbey, but that's actually what's been on the website in terms of preparation. And I think Hillary made a really good point about the faculty, the extraordinary faculty catches them. And everyone is going to have places where they have things that need to be more developed, and they have strengths. Our children were readers, and in that humanities course were able to really excel in the reading, but there were other places where they needed to take ownership, and high school requires people to dig deeper. And so that's what I would say with respect to preparation. I wouldn't be overly concerned, I guess is kind of the feedback.
I would agree. And the one thing I would say, and I don't know how I think it depends on the student, but organizational skills, like that's half the battle. So if there's anything to do with organizational skills, using a plan book if they haven't used one before, and writing things down, that's always a leg up. But I agree. I mean, the teaching is incredible, and I think that you can't cram for these kind of things. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But organizational skills.
There we go. David, do you want to weigh in about how you prepared Diego to board?
Hi, sorry, I got briefly disconnected there.
Oh,
yeah, sure. Yeah, in our experience, again, it was very different in the sense that, we hadn't had that experience previously at such a young age, but he was fortunate that he was previously in a school where he was exposed to the rigor and the academic standards that are comparable to the Abbey. But even when he got there, I think some of the things that, and I'm speaking from my interaction with him and what he has said, it was that, the teachers were extremely supportive. everyone was very, understanding of him, but at the same time, they were, they pushed him and demanded. So, he struggled a few times with that, but, he still did very well. But the teachers are, you know, they know it, and you can see it when we get feedback from them. And I think we were also very, as parents, we were very hands off. That we trusted the school. We put them there, and we gave them the free reign. And when we get the grades and we get the comments from the teachers, and we have a conversation with them and ways to get better, even in the classes that he's doing very well, and the ones where there is opportunity. But the combination of things, he was still in a position that now, as a senior who's going to graduate in a couple of less than 2 months, I think he's very blessed to be where he is, and the opportunity that he's got, to go to a great college, and the choices that he had from that. So, and that's a testament to the whole experience at the Abbey.
Great, thank you. I've got 2 questions that are sort of interrelated here. In terms of being a boarding student, and living away from home, do you recommend regular visits and check-ins with your kids while they're here, coming up on weekends or different check-ins? And when you do visit campus, what are the highlights? What are the highlights of visiting campus or the local area? So I think, David, either you or Mary Beth, you guys don't live locally. So what are the highlights of the area for you guys in visiting your kids on campus?
Well, the campus is beautiful. So, I mean, it's always magnificent to be there. I mean, you really can't match it. And we've always loved spending time in Newport. Great restaurants. There's a lot to see. So there's some diversity in the experience besides what goes on, or the beauty of Portsmouth Abbey and all that offers. And there's always lots of programming on regularly scheduled gatherings for parents. But if we were to come to campus for a game and then take Martha or the boys out, we did have, really wonderful time and shared lots of great memories in Newport.
Okay. One thing.
I agree with Mary Beth. I'm not as fortunate that I can be.
David, you froze on us there for a second.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
We got you now. Yep, you're back.
Can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I don't know what's wrong with the connection. Yeah, I agree with Mary Beth. My experience, I think that's one of the first things that I noticed. My son was talking about the people that he met on his first visit, and my wife and I were talking about the beauty of the place. The campus is gorgeous. We live close to the water. My son grew up close to the water, and I think that's an important connection for him. But also the nature and the campus and the spaces are certainly an allure. The proximity to other places when we go visit, we always try to stay nearby, and obviously we cannot visit as often as if we live closer by, but we try to go to games and other events, Parents Weekend, and we've met some great families who we have developed friendships with over that. So, and then, one of my favorite places, I love to go to Public House right outside of the road, right outside of the Abbey. So there's the Newport and all other restaurants. So it's just a wonderful experience to get to visit when we're not nearby. So absolutely.
Great. Okay, someone asked about what to pack or bring to campus. There's a pretty comprehensive list on the website of what to pack and bring for your room, but does anybody have any secrets? A secret thing that is not there that you should definitely put in put in the car and bring to campus? No one's going to say Tupperware bins full of Easy Mac and popcorn and Gatorade to slide under the bed. I think that's always a good one.
Hot sauce.
Hot sauce. There you go. Hot sauce is a good one. There is a question here, and David, maybe this is for you since you've talked about food here. Balancing sports, fitness, and diet and nutrition. I mean, Diego's an athlete. How does he balance his nutrition here on campus?
Yeah, he does. You know, he sends me pictures all the time, and of sometimes when he's got a really good meal or they have special activities and events. They do like to order out sometimes, you know, on certain days, and you know they to kind of mix things up. And so, but I think that they, you know, obviously by looking at him, I know that since when he first got there, he's grown about 2 inches and I think 55 pounds since he got there. So obviously the nutrition is working. So, but they do have, and they, I remember I think it was the first time I went in the fall of his sophomore year that I went to a mass, and he explained to me, he said, I was sitting up on the second level in the church, and he said, when the mass ends, we're all going to run out to the right side of the church. Don't panic. There's no fire. There's no emergency. It's just we want to get to the brunch first. And I remember noticing that as soon as the mass ended and everyone stood up, all the boys were printed out, and you know, they're all trying to get the sausages and the bacon and all that stuff. So I know that they enjoy it, and you know, again, like I said, it's a combination of food that they have and prepare by themselves, and they get to order sometimes and eat together. So I'm, you know, I have never been concerned about that nutrition there.
Right. I had a question about confirmation in terms of the academic year. We have a confirmation program that students can sign up for, and basically they will meet over a series of weeks. It does not conflict with a class or with any extracurricular activities. It's a set time during the week, and then they're able to get confirmed here on campus, usually early May. Is when students do that. So in terms of a confirmation program, logistically much easier than going through your local church and CCD because everything is right here. And then the last question that we have here, and I'll open this to anybody, in terms of feedback from faculty, what types of feedback do you get from faculty throughout the course of the school year, be it classroom teachers, coaches, house parents? Anybody want to jump in on what they have?
I would say there's a fall, I can't remember the exact time of day. It's early in the year, there's an opportunity to, I guess this year we Zoomed with all the teachers. It was awesome because we got a sense of how the students were doing, the class curriculum. It was a great conversation. And I think, Steve, that happens live each year at some point. So it's just a great way to interact with the teacher and get a one-on-one with any, you know, areas of work or, you know, where the student's excelling. I found that very helpful.
One of my favorite days of the year is, or weekends, is Parents Weekend. You get to attend classes with your child, and it is by far my favorite day. And this year, as Hillary mentioned, we did it on Zoom, and the parents were able to meet with the faculty. That same weekend, you are able to schedule conferences, one-on-ones with your faculty. And so, but the communication that I have always had with the faculty is they are available. You can reach out to their advisor. You can reach out to the faculty as needed. I will tell you, with my second going through, I have learned as a parent, it is much better to let them take ownership. And we all manage our students and our children differently because they're different. But I know they're there, and I know that they're an email away or a phone call away. if that was needed. You'll have the opportunity to be on campus. And so their faculty are also their coaches. And there'll be opportunities for parents to gather. There's receptions and et cetera. And it's wonderful as part of the community. They will eagerly engage you about your child, and they are as excited to share things about your child as you are to hear them. And that's just been a really wonderful part of the community. But they are accessible as needed. And again, there's a lot of engagement opportunities.
Great. Well, I think I covered all of the questions here. I appreciate these questions. These were great. These were hard hitting. These were made us think, which is what they're supposed to do. And I would like to thank all the parents for being here, and specifically, thank my 4 current parents for spending a little over an hour with us and really answering these questions, sharing your thoughts. Thank you guys. We appreciate your time, effort, and energy here. And for the rest of you parents, again, if you want to get in touch with anyone here in the school community, parents, students, faculty members, let me know. And we are happy to put you in touch with anyone so that you can get your individual questions answered. And otherwise, for those of you who've already enrolled, lots of other great information coming your way about course selection and how to prepare to, for dorm life, and all sorts of different things coming your way. For those of you that haven't yet enrolled, 3 days and counting. So let's go. Get those enrollment contracts in. We're looking forward to the start of next school year. It's going to be great, and it's a great group that's already formed here in terms of our newly enrolled students, and I know we're going to add some more to that, and it's going to be wonderful. So with that, thank you all for spending time with us tonight. We look forward to connecting with you all at some point soon, and please don't be shy if you have questions. So
Great.
thank you, everybody.